We continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Gemara in Meseches Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin Daf 50b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara was discussing how do we know, according to Rabbi Shimon, that Sreifa is stricter than Sayif, and the Gemara mentioned that Sayif has a stringency because it's used by Ir Nidachas, but the Gemara now says which one is stricter, those who are causing people to worship Avodah Zarah, the Mediach, or those who are convinced to worship Avodah Zarah, and the Gemara says, Haveyomer Koach HaMediach, obviously the Koach HaMediach is stronger, and Rashi explains, Haveyomer Koach HaMediach, the one who's Mediach, who causes others to worship Avodah Zarah, is obviously stricter. Rabbi Shimon Islay Madicha Ir Hanidachas Bechenek, as we're going to see, Rabbi Shimon holds the Madicha Ir Hanidachas, those who cause the people of the Ir Hanidachas to worship Avodah Zarah, they actually get Chenek, V'yolef Lam Mikra, Be'elohen HaNechnakin, that's learned out later on, Umid Madichin Bechenek. Now, from the fact that those who cause the Avodah Zarah get Chenek, V'nidachin B'Sayif, and those who are convinced to worship the Avodah Zarah, they get Sayif, so Alma Chenek Chomer Misayif. That's how we see, according to Rabbi Shimon, that Chenek is stricter than Sayif, Ukvar Kaimel and already on the previous Amud we said to Sreifa Chamura Michenek, that Sreifa is stricter than Chenek, and so therefore Hilkach Kol Shekain the Chamura Hi Misayif Mikal V'Chomer. Obviously it's stricter than Sayif. If Sayif is even less than Chenek, Ma Chenek the Chomer Misayif V'Chulu, because again you can make that Kal V'Chomer, and the Gemara continues V'Kal V'Chomer, so we make the following Kal V'Chomer Uma Chenek Shechomer Misayif, like Rashi just said, just like Chenek, which is stricter than Sayif, Sreifa Chamura Mimenu, Sreifa is stricter than Chenek, so Sayif Hakal, so Sayif again, which is less than Chenek, lo kol shekain, certainly Sreifa is stricter than Sayif. And the Gemara continues, Skila chamur michenek, again according to Rabbi Shimon. How do we know that Skila is stricter than Chenek? Shekain nitna lemegadef ulo oved avodas kochavim, because that's the punishment for somebody who's megadef, who blasphemes, curses HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and somebody who's oved avodas kochavim, who worships avodah zarah. Umay chumra kedaman. Why is that so strict? Like we said, that's somebody who denies the fundamentals of the Torah. But the Gemara says adrab, on the contrary, Chenek chomer. Maybe we should argue that Chenek is stricter. Shekain nitan lemake ave v'imo, because that's the punishment for someone who strikes his father or his mother. Umay chumra shekain hukash v'chulo. And why is that so strict? Because honoring one's parents is similar to honoring HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Gemara says to that, Mida afke rachmona la'arusa bas Yisrael michlal nesua bas Yisrael. From the fact that the Torah says an arusa bas Yisrael is treated stricter than a nesua bas Yisrael. Again, this is talking about situations of adultery, and the arusa is the betrothed, and the nesua is the married. And we say arusa is stricter. How is it stricter? It goes mechenek l'skila, because a nesua bas Yisrael gets chenek, and an arusa bas Yisrael gets skila. So shma mina. So you see that skila chamura. You see that skila is stricter. And the Gemara continues, skila chamura misayif. How do we know that skila is stricter than sayif? That stoning is stricter than beheading. Shekain nitana lemegadef v'chulu. Again, that's given to someone who curses HaKadosh Baruch Hu, somebody who worships avodah zarah. But adrabah, but you can say the contrary. Sayif chamur. Maybe we should say that sayif is stricter. Shekain nitan la'ansha ir hanidachas, because that's the punishment for those who worship avodah zarah in an ir hanidachas. Umay chumra shekain mamonim avad. And how do we know that's so strict? Because their property is destroyed. Amrit. So again, we say, as we said above, koach meruba. Which one is stronger, koach hamediach or koach hanidach? Is it the one who convinces others to do avodah zarah, or the one who is convinced? Havyomer koach hamediach. Obviously, it's the mediach, the one who convinces others, that is stricter. And so, therefore, as we said above, kal v'chomer, we can make the following kal v'chomer. Uma chenek shechomer misayif. If chenek is stricter than sayif, skila chamur mimenu, but skila, stoning, is stricter than chenek, than strangulation. So sayif hakal lo kol shekain. So certainly sayif, which is more lenient, certainly skila is going to be stricter. And the Gemara continues, Chenek chomer misayif. How do we know that Chenek is stricter than Sayif? Shekei nitan l'makei ave v'imo, because again, that's the punishment for somebody who strikes his father and his mother. Umay chomer kedaron. Why is that so strict? Like we said, honoring one's parents is similar to honoring HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Adarab, on the contrary, Sayif chomer. Maybe we should say Sayif is stricter. Shekei nitan la'ansha ir hanidachas, because that's the punishment for those in an ir hanidachas. Umay chomer shekei mamonim avid. And what's so strict about that? Because their property is destroyed. Amrit, again, we'll say, as we said above, what is stronger, those who convince others to serve avodah zarah, or those who are convinced and serve the avodah zarah? It's obviously the ones who convince. V'tanya, we learned in a brayso, those who convince others in an ir hanidachas to serve avodah zarah get skila. Rabbi Shimon omer bechenek, and as we said, Rabbi Shimon says chenek. You see, according to Rabbi Shimon, that chenek is stricter. And the Gemara continues, Margala befume de Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan would regularly say, Nara ha-me'orasa bas kohen shezinsa beskila. According to the Rabbanan, if you have a young woman who's me'orasa, who's betrothed, and she's the daughter of a kohen and she commits adultery, she's going to get skila. Rabbi Shimon Omer b'sreifa. Rabbi Shimon says that a Nara ha-me'orasa bas kohen shezinsa is going to get sreifa. And zinsa me'avia, let's say she commits adultery with her father, according to the Rabbanan beskila, she's going to get skila. Rabbi Shimon Omer b'sreifa. Rabbi Shimon says she's going to get sreifa. And the Gemara continues, my kamashmalon, what is this teaching us? The Rabbanan, it's teaching us that according to the Rabbanan, Nesua yotza l'sreifa velo arusa, that a Nesua, she gets sreifa, unlike a Bas Yisrael, who gets chenek. The Bas Kohen, who's Nesua, who commits adultery, gets sreifa, but that's not true by an Arusa, because by an Arusa Bas Yisrael, she's going to get skila, and therefore the case of a Bas Kohen has to be at least as strict as a Bas Yisrael, is going to get skila. But according to Rabbi Shimon, Achas Arusa doesn't matter if the Bas Kohen is betrothed. V'achas Nesua doesn't matter if she's married. Yotza l'sreifa, she's going to get sreifa, and the reason for that is because by the Arusa she gets sreifa, because sreifa, according to Rabbi Shimon, is actually stricter than skila. So even though the Bas Yisrael by the Arusa gets skila, the Bas Kohen by the Arusa is going to get sreifa because of the fact that Rabbi Shimon holds that sreifa is stricter. As the Gemara now explains, V'tayim amai, what's the reason? Mishum de l'Rabbanan skila chamura, because according to the Rabbanan, stoning is stricter than burning. Rabbi Shimon sreifa chamura, but according to Rabbi Shimon, burning is actually stricter than stoning. Nafkamina, and the difference is l'mishan is chayev shtei misos bezdin. Let's say somebody is chayev 2 misos bezdin, 2 death penalties by court, and nidon bechamura, he's going to get the stricter one. So we need to know which one is stricter. And the Gemara continues, my Rabbi Shimon, what is the sheet of Rabbi Shimon? The Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, Shnei klolos nemru bebas kohen. There are 2 rules when it comes to the daughter of a kohen. And the Gemara interrupts, bebas kohen velo bebas Yisrael. You mean that there are rules by the Bas Kohen that are not by the Bas Yisrael? And what the Gemara says is, no, ema af bebas kohen. What it means is, even by a Bas Kohen, v'hotzi hakasav nesua michlal nesua v'arusa michlal arusa. And the pasuk is saying that a nesua by a Bas Kohen is different than a nesua by a Bas Yisrael. Again, as we said, a nesua Bas Yisrael, there it's going to be chenek, but a nesua Bas Kohen is going to be sreifa. And arusa, according to Rabbi Shimon, also is different, because according to Rabbi Shimon, again, an arusa Bas Yisrael is going to get stoning, but an arusa Bas Kohen is going to get sreifa, because again, according to Rabbi Shimon, sreifa is stricter than skila. As the Gemara now continues, just like when we make a distinction between a Bas Kohen nesua and a Bas Yisrael nesua, the Bas Kohen nesua is lahachmir, is stricter. So too by a Bas Kohen arusa being different than a Bas Kohen, that by a Bas Yisrael arusa lahachmir, it's going to be stricter. And the Gemara continues, zomame nesua Bas Kohen bechlal zomame nesua Bas Yisrael. We treat Edom zomamin by a nesua Bas Kohen in the same way we treat the Edom zomamin by a nesua Bas Yisrael, meaning to say they're going to get chenek. V'zomame arusa Bas Kohen, and when it comes to zomame arusa Bas Kohen, bechlal zomame arusa Bas Yisrael. Again, that's not treated like the zomame arusa Bas Kohen, but the Edom zomamin by a situation of arusa Bas Kohen are actually treated the same as the Edom zomamin by an arusa Bas Yisrael. And Rashi explains, Margala befume de Rabbi Yochanan Sidr Haya Hadavar Hazeh Befiv. He always used to say the following: V'lo shashana b'Mishnah Brisa. The point of the Gemara is Rabbi Yochanan used to say this, but it was not taught in any Mishnah or Brisa. Elakach kibla shmur meirabu. He just had a tradition from his Rebbe of these opinions of the Rabbanan and Rabbi Shimon. And Rashi continues, Beskila with skila, the Rabbanan islu da arusa lo yotza l'sreifa, because again, according to the Rabbanan, by a Bas Kohen arusa, it's not going to be sreifa, it's going to be skila. Timkei nimsa to make a Bas Kohen, because if you would say skila, if you would say sreifa rather, it would end up that you're actually being lenient by a Bas Kohen according to the Rabbanan, because the Rabbanan would be saying sreifa by a Bas Kohen, but skila by a Bas Yisrael arusa, that wouldn't make sense. That's why the Rabbanan say it has to be at least skila, or it has to be skila rather, by a Bas Kohen arusa, so it's the same as a Bas Yisrael arusa, can't possibly be more lenient. Rabbi Shimon Omer b'sreifa, but Rabbi Shimon says no, by Bas Kohen arusa also we can say sreifa. The sreifa chamura, because according to Rabbi Shimon, sreifa is stricter. Hilkach leslach lafuke michlal stam Bas Kohen, the cross stam aksiv. Therefore, according to Rabbi Shimon, since sreifa is stricter, that's the simple way of reading the pasuk. The pasuk just says the Bas Kohen gets sreifa, and Rabbi Shimon is able to apply that across the board, whether by an nesua, whether by an arusa. And the Gemara continues, Zinsa me'avia. Then the next part of the statement was, if she commits adultery with her father, Rashi explains that that case, Arusa Bas Yisrael, that's talking not about a Bas Kohen. That's talking about an Arusa Bas Yisrael, that's a Bas Yisrael who's betrothed. Shezinsa Mei Avia, she commits the adultery with her father. De'ika Shtei Misa, so in that situation you have two possible death penalties. Skila Mishum Arusa, you have a death penalty of Skila because of the fact that she's betrothed. Again, that's a Bas Yisrael. Arusa Shezinsa gets Skila. Usreifa Mishum De Mei Avia Zinsa. Now she would be liable to Sreifa because she had the adultery with her father. Debisreifa, because there the punishment is Sreifa, Kedi Alfin and Beilohen on Israfin, like we're going to learn later on. So there's also the same machlokas. Beskila l'Rabbanan, the Skila Chamura. According to the Rabbanan, Skila, because Skila is stricter than Sreifa. Rabbi Shimon Omer Bisreifa Hakamash Malon. Again, Rabbi Shimon says Sreifa because that's stricter Hakamash Malon. To the Rabbanan Mishum the Islu Skila Chamura Sviru Darusa Lo Yatzul Sreifa. So you see from here that according to the Rabbanan that Skila is stricter, so therefore an Arusa is not going to get Sreifa. Can Mefarish V'Yazul V'Tayim Amai again, because you have to assume that the Bas Kohen is going to be at least as strict as the Bas Yisrael. V'nafgamina mehad Rabbi Yochanan, and the difference from what Rabbi Yochanan is saying, Da'amar demishum de Rabbanan skila chamur have Arusa Bas Kohen b'skila. Again, that he's saying that according to the Rabbanan, skila is stricter. That's why an Arusa Bas Kohen gets skila. Mishum de Rabbi Shimon sreifa chamura mukila b'sreifa. And according to Rabbi Shimon, sreifa is chamura, so the Bas Kohen Arusa gets sreifa. Shmami noah hamischayev shtei miso. So you see that somebody who's chayev, two different death penalties, nidon b'chamur, you get the stricter one. To hachanami shtei miso sika, here also you have two possible death penalties. Skila kedin Arusa, usreifa kedin Bas Kohen. You have skila as an Arusa, you have sreifa like a Bas Kohen. Hilkach l'Rabbanan al karchach Arusa lo yatzal l'sreifa. Therefore, according to the Rabbanan, it can't be sreifa because skila is stricter. Well, Rabbi Shimon yatzal, according to Rabbi Shimon, it's going to be sreifa. And the Gemara continued. My Rabbi Shimon le'el mahader da'amr Rabbi Shimon l'taime. The Gemara is going back on what it said earlier because it said Rabbi Shimon follows his opinion. The Amar achas Arusa ve'achas nesua yatzal l'sreifa, because Rabbi Shimon holds both an Arusa Bas Kohen and nesua Bas Kohen gets sreifa. Heichi shaminan le. Where do we see that? Shnei klolos nemru b'Bas Kohen. There are two rules by a Bas Kohen. Achas ba'arusa ve'achas b'nesua, meaning two rules, one by an Arusa and one by a nesua. Kilomar k'shekol ala kosav be'ishes ish mos yumas hanoev hanoafes. When we talk about adultery, that they should die, those who commit the adultery, af Bas Kohen mashma b'chenek. It would sound like a Bas Kohen is the same, gets strangulation. Uk'shehotzi Arusa l'skila. Now when we're saying that the Arusa gets skila, af Bas Kohen b'mashma, also the Bas Kohen that's talking about an Arusa, again by Bas Yisrael, gets skila, so you would say also Bas Kohen b'mashma. Hainu klal sheni, that would be the second rule. Uparchinan, and then we ask Bas Kohen v'lo b'Bas Yisrael, hai kroi stam aksivi. These psukim which have these two rules by Arusa and Nesua, they're not written by a Bas Kohen, they're written in general. And the point is, ema af Bas Kohen. It means to say, even by a Bas Kohen, you have this distinction. V'achi kamar means to say, shtei klalo shenemru b'Torah ba'arusa b'skilo v'nesua b'chenek. When the Torah says in general that by an Arusa it's skila, by a Nesua it's chenek, af Bas Kohen haisa tchila b'mashma. Bas Kohen also originally would seem like that. Uva hakasa v'hotzi lach Bas Kohen. And the pasuk comes and says, no, a Bas Kohen is different. Lidon b'sreifa, gets sreifa. Stam aksiva v'yachas Arusa, v'yachas Nesua, hotzi l'sreifa. Rabbi Shimon says, when the pasuk says sreifa by Bas Kohen, it means across the board, whether Arusa, whether Nesua. Arusa Bas Kohen mechlal Arusa Bas Yisrael miskila l'sreifa. Again, an Arusa Bas Kohen is different than an Arusa Bas Yisrael because it's skila instead of because it goes from skila rather to sreifa. The Arusa Bas Kohen gets sreifa and not skila according to Rabbi Shimon because sreifa is stricter. And Nesua mechlal Nesua mechanik l'sreifa. The same thing by a Nesua Bas Kohen. She's different than a Nesua Bas Yisrael. Instead of chenek, the Nesua Bas Kohen gets sreifa. Tzeu laman mikan shas sreifa chamur. And you learn from here that sreifa is the strictest. The makash hotzi Nesua mechlal Nesua lahachmer aleh. Just like by Nesua, we're being stricter on the Bas Kohen Yotza. The Sreifa kol modim the chamur mechanek. Everybody agrees Sreifa is stricter than chenek. After shehotzi Arusa mechlal hu Arusa lahachmer aleh hotzia. So too, when we're saying that a Bas Kohen Arusa is different, it's in order to be stricter with her. And Rashi continues, then we said, Zomame Nesua Bas Kohen, Bechlal Zomame Nesua Bas Yisrael. Let's say you have Edom Zomamin by a case of a Nesua Bas Kohen. They're treated the same as Edom Zomamin by Nesua Bas Yisrael, meaning Bechenek, they get Chenek. The Sreifa doesn't apply to them. Shalo Hotzi HaKosav Ela Osa Levada, because that Sreifa applies only to her. Techsev Hi Bo'esh Tisarif, she gets the punishment of Sreifa. Velo Bo'ala, that does not apply to the person she had relations with. Velo Zomamea, and it doesn't apply to her Edom Zomamin. And we will take a look at Rabbeinu Chananel as well, because he explains this by Zomamei Arusa, Zomamei Nesua Bas Kohen, Bechlal Zomamei Nesua Bas Yisrael Bechenek. Again, as Rashi said, Zomamei Nesua Bas Kohen are the same as Zomamei Nesua Bas Yisrael. They get Chenek. They are not going to get Sreifa. Zomamei Arusa Bas Kohen, and also Zomamei Arusa Bas Kohen, Bechlal Zomamei Arusa Bas Yisrael. They're going to be included in Zomamei Arusa Bas Yisrael. And again, not Sreifa, but it's going to be Beskila. They are going to get Skila. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Ubas ish Kohen kiseichel. Again, this is the pasuk about the daughter of a Kohen, that she gets sreifa. So it says, if the Bas ish Kohen kiseichel liznos is the full pasuk, so yochel afilu chilas haShabbos. Now I might think this is talking about a Bas ish Kohen who's mechal Shabbos. Maybe that's what kiseichel means. Talmud lomar liznos. It says we're talking about liznos. We're talking about adultery. Bechilulin shabiznos. We're talking about some kind of illicit relationship. Sakosim medaber. That's what the pasuk is talking about. Yochel afilu Penuya. Now I might think we're even talking about a Bas ish Kohen who's not married. Nemar kana avio, it says over here her father. V'nemar lahalon avio, and it says further on the same word, it says avio. Malahalon znus imzekas abal. Just like over there, it's talking about adultery where there's some kind of relationship with a husband, either married or betrothed. Afkan, so too over here is znus imzekas abal. There has to be some kind of relationship she has with a husband. Again, either she's betrothed or she is married. That's what we're talking about by the Bas ish Kohen. And the Brisa continues, Oeno Omer Avia Elahotzi, as Kol Ha'adam, or maybe the reason why it says Avia is that we're trying to exclude all other people. Keshu Omer Hi Mechaleles, have Kol Adam Omer. When it says Hi Mechaleles, we're talking about all people. Hamani Mekayim Avia, so why does it say Avia? Nemar Kan Avia, again, it says over here Avia, V'nemar Lahalon Avia, it says further on Avia. Malahalon's Nusim Zekas Abal, just like over there, we're talking about adultery of a woman who is married, again, either betrothed or Nesua married. Afkan is Nus Im Zekas Abal. So it's over here, that is what we're talking about. We're talking about Zekas Abal. The Gemara continues, Ima Lahalon Nara V'hiarusa. If further on we're talking about a Nara that's betrothed, Afkan Nara V'hiarusa, maybe we're only talking about, again, about a Nara that's betrothed. Nara V'hinesua, let's say she's a young girl, but she's married. Or Bogeres, or let's say she's a full adult, V'hiarusa, but she's betrothed. Bogeres V'hinesua, or let's say she's a full adult, but she's married. V'afilu Hiskina, even if she's older, Minayin, how do you know to apply it over there? Talmud Lomer Uvas Kohen, the pasuk says that this applies to a Bas Kohen. Mikol Mokom, it applies in all kinds of situations of Bas Kohen. Bas Kohen by the daughter of a Kohen. And Rashi explains Bas Kohen Kiseichel. Again, you have the Bas Kohen Kiseichel Ilo Kosav Liznos. If it didn't say the word Liznos, Mashma Afilu Chila Shabbos, I might have thought it means even if she desecrates Shabbos. Talmud Lomer Liznos. That's why it says Liznos Lakame Parich Chila Shabbos Baskili. The Gemara is going to ask later on. Of course, if she's Mechal Shabbos, then she's going to get skila. V'nemer lahalan benara hamorasa. Now it says further on again the word avia. That's by a regular nara hamorasa, not talking specifically about a Bas Kohen. Malahalan shezinsa b'shah shezekas habalala. Now just like over there by nara hamorasa who commits adultery, she's married in some fashion. Afkan is nus b'shah shezekas habalala. V'lo penuya. Obviously we're talking here also where there's some husband involved. It's not that she's unmarried. V'haidanaka tana hailishna. Now why are we saying this word zekas habal? V'lo nakat malahalan arusa. Why don't we say that over there by Nar Hamorasa, she's betrothed. Mishum desofo nami lasuye nesua l'sreifa, because as we're going to see, the Bryce is going to include not only an arusa but a nesua as well is going to get sreifa kadiyolef vazel as the Bryce goes on. Oeno omer avia, but maybe the reason why it says avia, it's not l'gzeira shavazu. It's not for this gzeira shava to compare it to a case of Nara Hamorasa to say there's zekas abal. Ela lahotzi as kol adam. Maybe it's to exclude all other people. Shem zinsa me avia tidon b'sreifa. If she commits the adultery with her father, she gets sreifa, the punishment of burning. Aval mishar kol adam tidon kabas Yisrael. Maybe if it would be with some other man, then she'd be judged like a Bas Yisrael. So now later on, the Gemara is going to ask, how would we even think this? Imkain ma'ir Bas Kohen, because if that was the case, you don't have to talk about a Bas Kohen. Va'afilu Bas Yisrael nami me'avia b'sreifa. Like we said above in Rashi also, a Bas Yisrael from her father is b'sreifa. Be'elohen ha-nisrafin. That's what we say in Elohen ha-nisrafin. So that wouldn't only be a Bas Kohen. Kisho omer hi mechaleles. When it says hi mechaleles, mashma hi mechaleles oso v'lo hu mechalelo. It sounds like she's profaning him, but he's not profaning her. Harei al korchach kishezinsa mishar kol adam amor. Obviously, it's talking where she commits the adultery with someone else, not her father. Hamani mekayim es avia. So again, why does it say avia? Lamali lemichtave klal elanem arkan. Again, and the reason is for the gzeira shava that we said above. And Rashi continues, Nara, a young girl, shehevia saros. That means she has the hairs of maturity. Velo hevia simone bagros, but she doesn't have the simonim that she's a full adult. And Rashi continues, Talmud lomer of askoin mikol makam meribuya devav. Here they're learning from that extra vav kadarish. That's what they're darshaning over here. That it includes all kinds of Bas Kohen. It doesn't matter Nara, Bogeres, etc. Uch Rabbi Akiva savarla the darish la lakamon. It's like Rabbi Akiva darshans later on. Ki agavn in the same fashion. V'lekel if rushay de midichsiv krostama yolef time. And you can't say that it's just from the fact that it says Bas Kohen and it says it's stam that's what we're darshaning. That it just says it without explaining any more details. And so that's why we're saying Mikol Malkum and applies to all Bas Kohen. explains, because there is a Gzeira Shava that would undo that kind of understanding, and therefore, says Rashi, it's actually coming from the extra Vav, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Nun Aleph Amud Aleph.